This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network, available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Let's go, business storytellers. How's everyone doing? If you are keeping track at home, this is our second live stream today. We're basically recording ahead because most of June will be this show's summer break. So there won't be any live streams, just rebroadcast. And of course, on the podcast channels, you won't even notice because there's a show every week for the next 2 months already scheduled. Today, we want to talk about how does content actually build trust? Building trust is important. I ran across Ashley Guttuso on LinkedIn, and you can connect with her there. We'll have her LinkedIn profile up on the bottom there, linkedin.com/IN/Ashley Guttuso. Connect with her there and follow her tips, so to speak. But let's find out. What do we have to do to build trust through content? And what does that even mean? We like a good definition around here. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me today.
And really excited. You're in Mississippi. I'm in Iowa. It's cold here. It's probably not cold in Mississippi.
It's not. We are in that last little phase of spring that makes you think the day might be pleasant until you walk outside and the humidity knocks you over. So welcome to a Mississippi Deep South summer.
Well, I'm glad you're sitting down and can talk to us. So give us a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, and then let's dive into how to build trust with content.
Sure. So who I am is a girl who grew up in the great state of Mississippi, which is the home state of many, many famous storytellers. So I like to think that storytelling is just something that kind of happened on front porches in my childhood and is in my veins. I harnessed that, majored in English as a undergrad and then in journalism at NYU for my master's program. And my passion is narrative nonfiction. So that led me down this road to kind of discovering what the key elements are in immersive journalism and in taking the elements of fiction that make it so persuasive and entertaining and fun to read and applying them to the real life, engaging stories that are happening all around us. And what path I ended up following from journalism to content marketing kind of stayed in that lane of, okay, now it's no longer the reader or the person who you're interviewing whose story you're telling, but you're telling the customer's story back to them and creating a moment for your brand to be part of their story. So I kind of went from a magazine journalism career through to copywriting and then to content marketing and then kind of directing larger bits of marketing. So getting into product and demand gen and other elements like that. But my true roots are in what is a good story and how can it earn my readers' attention and trust, so that when they have to make a buying decision that they know they can be confident in buying whatever product that I have to sell them because I am forging relationship through content.
It's very interesting to me. I grew up in journalism as well. And certainly when I grew up in journalism, I learned how to tell stories that connected with people, even though back in those days, we could hardly measure anything, right? Because print newspaper and whatnot. But certainly that has helped. And especially today when many brands say we want to have a publishing house in-house, right? Or some people call it a content machine or whatever, right? Something like
Right.
that. Content engine, I guess, is another term I've heard. How much is some of that necessary? I mean, you kind of hear the whole debate over quantity versus quality. And I always think, yes, I want quality too, but you need a certain level of quantity to get a certain level of quality. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think going back to your statement about attribution, we can still look at journalism and say there is one measurement, and that is subscription, right? That is people willing to actually read or consume what you are creating. And journalism existed for such a long time based on the fact that if you, the media company, could have the attention and trust of your readership, then it was worth an advertiser paying to get a piece of that attention. I think how that conveys to marketing is if once you have a clear and effective product marketing engine that explains the values of your product, that has the ability to teach your customer what problem you solve and get them through to the epiphany that they need you in their lives, then you back up a step and you go, okay, do we or don't we want to become a trusted content resource for our target audience? And my answer is typically yes. Do you need to publish the way a media company might? Not necessarily, but there is huge value in becoming a trusted resource to your buyer before the moment in which they need to make a decision of whether or not to buy your product. So one way I like to think about this is if you're looking at like a book series, and I use Harry Potter because that's a series that a lot of people are familiar with and that I have a daughter who recently finished reading, so they're kind of fresh to me. And I loved them when they were published. But the concept of maybe your brand solves for the challenge in book 4, right? Like you're the Goblet of Fire. And that is the kind of content you need to start with. Like, hey, you got to like win this competition. We're going to teach you how to win it, right? But there is immense value in reverse architecting and going like, well, what challenges does our customer face when they are in book 3 and in book 2? Because we've got to get them past other challenges before they can even consider our product. Like there may be something in your industry that you've got to overcome before you get to us. So what is their Azkaban? What is their Chamber of Secrets? And building content that supports them in those moments can forge the relationship needed to be the top of mind automatic choice when they get to the problem that you actually solve with your software or your services that you sell. So it's kind of like holding their hand through something where there's not a moment that you should be pushing them to buy. It's more of a relationship building moment where, just like in any natural courting relationship, you wouldn't necessarily ask someone to marry you on the first date. And I feel like a lot of content that's out there right now is doing that. It's like, hey, we've got a resource for this. You engage with that resource and suddenly we're like, hey, you want to get married? Want to buy our product? Want to do this? Want to do that? And the customer or the buyer is now in fear of giving anyone their email address because they know they're going to be bombarded with nurture emails to get them into a consideration phase for the product, when what really we should be doing is thinking of it as a trust journey and kind of prioritizing like what else could we serve them and create for them? What else could we teach them? How could we continue this relationship so that it feels much more natural? And obviously create a path to product. If they are already at the phase where they need to discover your product, make that a secondary CTA. But if you download my resource for something that's like 2 steps away from thinking about buying this product, my CTA and my nurture email series for you should be something more akin to, hey, we have a whole library of resources on this topic, or we're doing a new webinar in a few weeks that you might be interested in, and really trying to create for them a trust journey through the content that you publish so that it's a more natural conversion at the moment when they actually need your product.
You know, what's interesting about that is I totally agree. Once you sign up for anything, you will get nurture emails until you're blue in the face. In fact, one time I was evaluating a product and service, and I was ready to buy, but the company I didn't go with them because they just kept hounding me. And I'm like, can I please have 30 minutes to think about this? And like, you do not need to call me and see, like, I'm going to call you when I'm ready to talk to you. And I already called you, so you know I have interest in talking to you. But it's just interesting. Do you think that's the reason is because of the internal pressures are topping the customer needs, or why is that happening?
Yes, it's a very me first situation, which is not how you would like handle any other relationship in your life, right? Like you as a human know, for some reason, you innately know that when you begin to get to know someone who may eventually do something back for you, that it is like almost automatic in us to go like, okay, how can I build up rapport for this person? And not even thinking strategically, but just naturally. Friends are in service of each other and generous at times. Like if I meet someone, I might say like, hey, I'd love to take you to lunch or this or that. So it's never like all of a sudden like, hey, I sell this thing and I want you to want it, right? But for some reason, brands forget to be human, and they are treating content as if it is a demand capture activity when they're like, I understand like, hey, someone lands on your blog about something very close to the buying process, then maybe, yeah, they need to know you sell a product. But if someone is a phase or two away and you're running content to get their interest and earn their respect and build your credibility as an expert in that industry or in that space, like the worst thing you can do is to undermine any trust you've built with like a single piece of content by then changing gears completely and saying like, you should buy it right now, buy. And so it's kind of this thing that I feel like nurture is such a nice word, right? It's what parents do with young children as we grow, or we nurture our relationships with our friends. But brands have turned nurture into squeeze you by the neck until you make a decision. And a lot of times that decision is to walk away because we don't want to be forced into buying decisions. We want to be courted.
We want to be courted, and of course when you just ask, push, that's not very effective courting.
Yeah.
Now when I ran across you, and I also included this in an article over on christophtrapp.com, you had a very interesting LinkedIn post, and you kind of said, this has to be earned. Every little thing has to be earned along the way. Talk about that a little bit, because I think sometimes, and maybe I Yell at Fishbach's book on motivations talks about this a little bit. So she says, if you go out for dinner, you're willing to pay $12 for that drink once you get there, but you're not willing to pay $12 for the valet parking, because the valet parking is a means and the drink is basically the end goal. So, and I thought of content strategy and content marketing a little bit there, because like when you say, well, you have to do all these different things, right, to get there, is that why people want to overlook them? Or why do we even have to talk about this, that we have to earn people's trust and move them through the funnel?
I think it's, to me, it's questionable why we do have to talk about it, right? Because it's like we've kind of forgotten how to be human. I did a presentation with Dennis Shao of attention retention at Content Marketing World last year, and we went into what we called counterintuitive email strategies that could earn you inbox attention. And it was funny because the list of things that we came up with that were counterintuitive, so many of them were tied to actually acting like a human. And it's sad that we have to think of that as counterintuitive. But what a lot of times in marketing, there becomes like a new channel you can use, right? And then within a few years, the best practices are no longer best practices because people have twisted them. And so suddenly this new way you can communicate with your audience becomes like it's dead now, right? And it's not dead. It's because a majority of people who are thinking very poorly have come in and twisted it and manipulated it and used it in a subversive kind of toxic way versus brands that they stand out. When a brand starts showing you that they're trying to earn your trust, I think that LinkedIn post was like, you've got to earn each next click, each next thing they consume, each CTA, each next email they open. All of those things are part of that trust journey to me. And what I particularly love about SaaS as an industry is that this is not just a pre-transaction mentality. You have got to continue earning trust every renewal, right? So that's month by month or year by year. And if you are not nurturing that relationship in an authentic way, they don't have to stay, right? It may be painful to make a decision to walk away if they're already in it, but we know people churn because they feel like they are not being prioritized or not being treated well. And I think it's an absolute disconnect if you are kind of setting expectations up front that then you fail miserably to meet. It's a huge disconnect. So I did a presentation for marketing profs. They had a B2B shakeup a month or two ago. And we did this whole thing on the trust journey. And Ashley Faust, who is the director of integrated product marketing at Atlassian, had kind of shared with her LinkedIn community the example of trust content that I brought up during that session. And it's a Jira, it's an Agile microsite for people who are looking to implement Agile, right, in their company. And then there are like little mentions of Jira and paths to get to Jira to kind of test out some of the Agile tutorial stuff that you are learning. And so that microsite in itself is such a great example of earning trust, but creating a path to the product. But you have to earn trust and keep building that trust every cycle or every phase of the customer life cycle, right? And so I just think it's kind of miserable that brands are sacrificing trust building for quick like lead capture, because oftentimes like 99% of the leads that you capture without actually trying to earn trust end up being poor quality fits in the first place.
Right, because they haven't built that relationship, right? And even if they get married, they might not like it. You were talking a little bit about building that trust even with customers. And we just talked with Wayne Mullins the other day here about full circle marketing. And you can actually scan his book there right on the screen. Maybe we can dive into that for a couple minutes. Talk about what should content or the marketing team's impact be with customers. How do they get involved, and how do they make it more of a bow tie funnel than just pushing leads that may or may not want to get married down the funnel?
Sure. So this can kind of go back to the media approach that you and I were talking about. I have oftentimes been on lean teams that needed to do a lot with one content medium, right? Like kind of it defies this whole like create for the funnel, and you've got top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, post funnel content, and really starts to think about like, who is our buyer? How do we serve them in any phase, right? And so for me, on occasion, that means, number one, you better know your target, like your ICP, really, really well. And you want to be able to demonstrate an understanding of that target so that they begin to trust you as an authority, because they can see through it. Like if you've got someone who is not a great reporter and is just really reporting the Google top hits for a specific keyword, that's not making you stand out and differentiate in like the sea of same content that we're seeing out there. So you need to figure out if there's a gap you can fill or how you can differentiate your content. And that includes doing a content audit of what the content landscape looks like for your buyer right now, or for your, when they're in the prospect phase and when they're in the customer phase. And then knowing and following it, like I think of it as akin to beat journalism, right? Like this is the industry you serve. You should have automated set up ways of staying in the know of the major things that impact their work on the day-to-day. And you need to disseminate that within your company so that not only marketing, but sales and CX understand the overarching challenges that are always going on, but also the it's a pain right now because the government did a thing and this is now a challenge, right? So that they understand the person who sits in that seat of the customer, and they're able to then work as a team to go what resources could we create that would support them right now, and what ongoing resources could we create. So that's why I like industry podcasts and industry newsletters that are actually kind of letting the brand capture a headline, but then have someone from within the company giving advice on how to tackle this within your company, even if it's not a thing they're going to use your tool to solve, is highly beneficial and continues to earn that trust. So if I'm a customer and I'm getting an email from you saying hey, this just happened, here's the research that we put together that could help you navigate this challenge that lies way outside of what you use our tool to do, I appreciate that as a customer.
When you talk about next click, earning the next click, I was kind of thinking immediately about how many times I've been screwed over clicking on some PDF, right? Like it had a fantastic headline to give them my email. And then when I actually opened the PDF, one, you couldn't read it on mobile because it had two columns or three columns. I'm not sure if I've seen three columns, but two columns at least. Horrible. Who designs crap like that anymore today with mobile devices, right? 2-column PDFs. And then even aside from the design, but the content wasn't even very deep. It was definitely not worth giving you my email for. So, that is a real problem. But what tips do you have, maybe in a couple minutes here, on understanding your ICP and how far should your ICP go? I mean, there's related, there's decision makers, influencers, there's people around it. I just saw a post from the CMO at Calendly, and she said, please stop calling me because I'm not even the person that spends my budget. I set the budget and then the team spent the budget. So you don't you can talk to me, but I'm not actually the decision maker once it's in their hands.
Excellent. So when I think about personas and the ICP and how well you should know them, this also leads me back to magazine journalism days, because publishers of magazines know everything about their reader, because it is their job to create content that their reader will love. They know what kind of brands they buy. They know what ages they are. They know all of those demographic details that they need to understand in order to strategize and publish content that will keep those people subscribed and reading their content. We need to be thinking in the same way. So I think in-depth customer research is very critical, and you can't just knock out a customer research project and be done. It needs to be ongoing. So my tip for this is, if you can set up some sort of podcast or live recording like this, where you're interviewing someone who is either an expert and could be a customer, or is an expert who influences your customer, get something where there's a cadence of talking to people in a raw format, even if you're not publishing it, right? At least one customer interview per month to take the gems that you learn out of that and spread it within your marketing team, spread it within your company. Because what you want to do is have an ongoing dialogue. I think of content as a brand's ongoing conversation with their target audience. And to have that conversation, you need to be able to speak in the language of your customer. So you have to immerse and understand, based on interaction with them, what will resonate with them. So do intense research, learn their challenges, their fears, their desires, their motivations, and learn what resources they already use or will. Like, learn where they're going to be when they're ready to take information from a brand and consume it and use it in their lives. So I'm saying, like, lean heavily on constant conversation.
And the way you understand people, of course, is you talk to them, you watch their actions and behaviors, and actually, understand them, see what they're going through. So don't make it so much about yourself, but make it about them. Ashley, it was great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. Time always flies when we have great experts on like you. In the last 30 seconds here, tell us how do people connect with you? Who should reach out? And thanks for joining us, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Ashley Guttuso. So linkedin.com/n/Ashley Guttuso. And just hit me up with a connection request. Let me know you heard this conversation. Ask questions if you want to. I am always happy to connect in that venue.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time.